Hello, everyone. Mary Kate Soliva here with you on Veteran Voices. Thanks for joining us today as we've got a wonderful conversation teed up with a great veteran and advocate. Stay tuned for a great discussion. Quick programming note before we get started. This program is part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming. And today's show in particular is conducted in partnership with our friends at Vets to Industry, near dear favorite of mine. Learn more about this powerful nonprofit that is serving so many folks at vetstoindustry.org. An initiative that's near and dear to my heart, the Guam Human Rights Initiative. You can find them on LinkedIn and at the University of Guam under Regional Center for Public Policy. Okay, without further ado, waiting for several weeks to talk to this guy, well, let's introduce our guest today. He is a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. He's also a huge advocate, probably a LinkedIn celebrity, as some might call him, project management expert, professional. But let's welcome in Josh Atkinson. So thank you for joining me today, Josh.
Hey, Mary Kate, I'm so glad to be here. I'm not sure I'm a LinkedIn celebrity. I'm just a shameless networker, and therefore I think people know me, love me, or hate me. I'm not sure. Is it notorious or famous? I think, but really glad to be here and awesome to get to know you. I've enjoyed the friendship that we've built last, couple of years, and for all the work that you're doing, with PMI and so many advocacy groups out there like Vets to Industry and others, really trying to help, I think share the same passion we have of how do we help veterans prepare earlier, become more aware, and have the tools and resources they need, farther out before transition, so that you're not tripping off the cliff, I think, in transition, and really can set yourself for success. So,
oh yeah,
really
absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. Definitely want to take that opportunity here to talk about how you continue to serve beyond the uniform. And I see representation. I think I was getting a little bit heavy on interviewing the Army, since I am an Army veteran, but can't forget about my Marine Corps brothers and sisters. So glad to have you on here. I'm going to take our listeners today, like way back. I don't know how far back we're going to go, but we're going to go way back and get to know you a little bit better. Awesome. But I'd like to start off by pumping us up with some motivation. Do you have a favorite motivational quote, song, lyric you can sing if you want to?
Oh, you don't want to hear me sing. That would break some windows. No, so my favorite quote, I think, hit me when I was, at the academy in college, that my greatest weakness is relying on my own strength. Right. And I think, I saw a lot of good leaders, a lot of good mentors that were out there saying you can't do it alone. And recently I hear people say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And just kind of going back to that, we need people in our life to help us get to where we really want to go. And so often in leadership, I think we get isolated. We don't know how to relate to people. When you're in transition, you feel like there's no one that you can talk to, and we carry a burden that we are not meant to carry by ourselves. I don't think God built us that way, right? We needed to have other people around us to help out. So it truly became something I've learned. It's hard to live by, but that our greatest weakness really is trying to do things alone, and we need to reach out and help each other. So that is my motivation, my mentorship strategy quote, whatever you want to call it for today, is that, we are here to help one another. And that is my passion.
I love that. And I definitely think that it's apparent in the work that you're doing now in so many different arenas in the veteran military space. So thank you for that. And that was definitely one to pump us up, because I think that that's what Veteran Voice is all about, is about giving back. So that's a fantastic quote, and the first time I've heard that one. So thank you. But I am going to take us back, as I said, can't let the listeners down. But let's talk about where you grew up.
All right. I am a SoCal boy at heart. I grew up in Chino, California. Yep, about an hour east of LA. And when I was a kid, they were disconnected cities. And now it's become like all the megatropolis of Los San Diego, where it's just one massive entity of houses, all over SoCal. So my life growing up in Southern California was very different, I think, than it is today. Spent time dirt bike riding in the high desert and shooting and blowing up stuff all over the flatlands out there in the training areas, out near Yuma and Arizona. And I remember riding dirt bikes through, the bombing ranges and some of that stuff as a kid, long before I even knew really much about the military, and spent a lot of time out in the desert. but loved what I got to do growing up. Spent a lot of time, outdoors, a lot of time in community, volunteer work with church and missions, and really kind of set, I think, the framework and foundation of service that I think has carried with me, long through my time in college and the military and now even beyond. And it's defined my why, which is really about leading and helping people. So, I was blessed, had a great, family life growing up, got to do a lot of good stuff, SoCal, from beaches to mountains and deserts, and exploring a lot of different cultures too, that I think, exposed me to the value of people and to never judge a book by its cover, but to try to get to know people, allow people to be who they are, be free to be who they are, get to know them. And then once you've known them, then assess. But it takes time and it takes energy, but it's worth it.
You talked about a lot about the desert and the sun and the heat. So no snow, I'm guessing.
Limited snow. No, 4 seasons did not exist in my childhood. I mean, we used to drive out to Big Bear and, places in the mountain to go tubing or snow skiing, but snow is a very infrequent part of my childhood. It is not that way anymore now in Virginia, but I do like snow. I did go to Minnesota where my cousins lived when I was a kid, and I think they had a high of 0 one day in winter, and I still could not comprehend how 0 became a high, on the weather chart. I was like, this is interesting.
Goodness.
And I think me and my infinite wisdom showed up on the plane wearing board shorts and a bomber jacket, and it was like -15 outside, and I was not prepared to go from SoCal to Minnesota in winter, but still had a great time. But I had some learning to do.
Oh gosh, and you mentioned, I'm trying to picture you on a dirt bike as well, but you talk about like the different facilities with bombing areas. So seeing that, did that sort of get you that drive of, oh my gosh, I want to do something hardcore, join the military kind of thing? Was that something, did you have a lot of exposure to the military at that age?
So I did air shows growing up. So I've always had a passion to want to fly and kind of being in and around and supporting the military. My dad was an Air Force vet, but he did, 3 years in as an MP, and he was never in uniform when I was alive. So it wasn't like a family thing, but one of my biggest mentors growing up, a guy named Billy Book, was a Marine infantryman back in Gulf War. Again, he wasn't serving when I knew him, but I think my dad's leadership style was very military based, from how he grew up. And then my mentors, I learned later on, were also just seemingly connected to military. So it wasn't a plan of mine growing up to say, hey, I'm going to go, to the Naval Academy. I'm going to go into the military. It just became an opportunity really later on in my life that was a great fit. So I actually told him I wanted to go to West Point, to your Army connection. And my mentor said I wasn't allowed to go to West Point. I had to go to the Marines Academy, and I had no idea what the heck he was talking about. So he told me about Annapolis, and I decided to apply, my senior year. And, like I said, by God's grace, I got the chance and privilege to go there. And I can't take credit for it. Right? Just who I was and what I was doing fit within that service community, and it allowed me the opportunity to go. And I think it's been a great blessing, as I've gone now through my crazy career and not being successful by military terms, but everything I've been able to do and experience has now led to my ability to help people today.
Yeah, so it sounds like it started early age for you. Even coming from, the fact that your dad was a veteran too, but having those different mentors along the way during that time in your life. Were there sort of any anecdotes or two from your upbringing that you clearly remember from that time? Any kind of lessons learned before you graduated high school?
I think the biggest one is always that, life is what you make it, right? And life isn't fair. And I try to teach that to my kids,
Yeah.
I remember a story of my dad, we're getting served ice cream or whatever we were having, and my sister walks up and complains that I was getting more than she was. So my dad took her bowl, scooped it into his own, and gave her none, and said, well, at least you could have had some, and now you get nothing, and that just kind of always hit. It's like, be grateful for what you have, realize that life will never be equal to everyone, but we're all blessed, and you can still make the best of whatever you get. Right. And, I did a similar thing with, we taught junior high later on, and I was like, look, this is how it's going to work. If y'all complain, you're getting none. So learn to be appreciative, and trying to teach that is obviously harder sometimes than to experience it. But I think it really just kind of set the framework of, try to be grateful, try to be content, appreciate what you have, and strive for more, right? You don't have to settle for what you have, but always be aware of how much you really do have, and don't miss out on the blessings of today simply because you're looking in the wrong place, right? And I think that really, set the framework. My mentor, who was a Marine, was, eat it now, taste it later. A lot of his anecdotes of being in the infantry and how hard it was and how much it kind of sucked once in a while. But, he kind of exuded the same thing of, always appreciate what you have. If you don't have it, make do, and improvise. So that's probably the one that kind of stands out from my upbringing of just,
That's great.
Keep fighting. It's never going to be fair, never going to be equal. Life is going to be hard, but it's what you do with it that counts, not complaining about it.
Yeah, that journey, right? And now I'm just imagining your sister's face when your dad took her scoop of ice cream. So
Oh, she was pissed.
what a way.
This is not fair. He's like, you are correct. But life isn't fair.
Oh my gosh. And so I think I'm gonna see that next time I see a ice cream on a cone. I'll like knock it off the kid's cone and see. There's a life lesson for you. Thanks to your dad for that. So yeah, that's a great segue in imagining that scoop of ice cream when you entered the academy, and that opportunity that you had to serve in a very unique environment. It's not like your typical commissioning route. Very, very unique. So you want to talk to us a little bit there about, I want to talk about the branch that you served in, but I know that was a pivotal time too, being at Annapolis, before you even figured out which branch you were going into.
Yeah, I mean, Annapolis is a unique place, right? It's absolutely beautiful. It is a leadership laboratory, as they would say, because you will experience all of the goods and all of the bads of leadership while you're there. But for me, it's sad or good or whatever, it felt like home, because my dad was very disciplined, very structured. So going there was not the culture shock, I think, that for some it can be. For me, I think it was a really good fit for me. I am kind of ADD and I get scatterbrained. So having that structure around me in college is actually a really good fit to help stay focused and stay disciplined, and really, again, expose you to a lot of other responsibilities early on. I remember being—
Your hospital corners were perfect, huh?
Oh yeah, 45 degrees, and you learn how to make sure they stay that way. But it's funny when you're there, you can almost tell who's going to be a Marine and who's going to be Navy, because those that are Marines always had uniforms were pressed and your shoes were shiny, and you could just kind of tell there was a different personality of people that kind of lended towards wanting to go Marine Corps, Spec War, versus those that wanted to go surface warfare, the other communities. But you still worked, you still played, you still did a lot of stuff together. And it was great to build that camaraderie and learn, but as you're there, I had Marines as my senior enlisted advisors. I just was kind of always still drawn to the Marine Corps community. And in some aspects, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I felt like the Marine Corps had more options, because you still had the aviation side, you still had, supply logistics and the ground side. And
Right.
it gave you a breadth of choices, where I felt like in the Navy, you're either surface warfare, aviation, or subs, and you kind of, that's it. And I was like, well, I don't know what I want, so I'm going to lean towards Marine Corps, because if this one doesn't work out, I have more options at the end, like hedging your bets. Right? If this doesn't work, I have more choices in the end. But I loved it. I loved where I started. I loved choosing Marine Corps, going through training, getting to experience and challenge yourself physically and emotionally and mentally. I mean, going through SEER, Arctic warfare, the basic school. I mean, a lot of the trainings you go through are really unique, and they really teach you a lot about yourself. They show you what you're able to handle, which I think breeds a level of confidence and character, right? In service, but really beyond that, you're able to know that, I've been through worse, I can handle this. And there really is a brotherhood, and a sisterhood, as I know you experienced in the Army. When you go through difficult times and you go through hard training, there's a bond you create that you cannot build outside of adversity, right? And I think as much as we don't like pain, we don't like hard times, right? Character is forged, right? And the chance to go through that training, the chance to go through those things really helps build a bond and a character that I'm forever grateful for. And, you were never not a Marine. You can never unbrainwash yourself. they are good at,
That's the truth. No true statement.
they are
Do you
good at
have
building that identity.
any challenges that you face at that time? Because like it is a unique place compared to any other commissioning leadership program out there, but were there any times that you can recall that you experienced a challenge at the academy? And so how you overcame that?
Chemistry freshman year and calculus. Sorry. No, I
Oh
think
yeah. Well, I mean, freshman year is not like any other freshman year at any other university, right? You're
no.
here, so.
I mean, I was always good academically. In high school, I was always good at math, and I was able to advance ahead into three-dimensional calculus in my freshman year. And the first day in class, the teacher starts talking, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And I raised my hand, going like, "I don't know what you're really saying right now." And he just blew me off, and is like, "We're moving on." And I think I never felt so like, "Oh shit," like one of those like, "What the heck is happening to me right now?"
Foreign language, huh?
Oh yeah, but it's just. Again, it was my first time in some ways to be really put out of my comfort zone. I'd been in circumstances as a kid, I was always, able to, be confident in who I was, and, not always a popular kid. So you deal with, typical childhood adversity, but, being at the academy, going from California to Maryland, couldn't have a cell phone, no one to really call at the time, back before cell phones were even really a thing, dating myself a little bit, and being put in environments where there wasn't that community to fall back on. You didn't have, immediate friends. You didn't have people to reach out to, and you're kind of having to discover who you are and learn how to deal with adversity without a safety net, right? I mean, you weren't completely alone. You had peers and, classmates, but from an emotional perspective, you're really kind of on your own for the first time. So there was a lot of trial for me emotionally that first year. All my friends growing up were older than I was, and yet at the academy, you can't fraternize with anyone who's an upper class as a freshman. So I couldn't make friends with the upper class. I couldn't go to the people I would probably normally gravitate towards to make friendships. So that became hard, and in that kind of silence, you have to go introspective and start seeing, who am I? Can I make this? Can I do this? And everyone's journey is different, but it really did challenge me a lot emotionally, at that time, to say, like, this is really where I want to be. Is this really what I want to do? Can I make it? Can I handle this? Because it was challenging. It was academically challenging for me, like an over 4.0 student, like all through high school. And I think I had like barely a 2.5 freshman year. I remember hoping for a D in my calculus class and just to get it done. And I was like, I'm not one of those people, like I'm failing. I'm, really struggling. And it challenged me a lot. But again, it set a character foundation that says you can get through it, right? When you go through the end and you persevere, you build confidence and you realize what you're made of, and you start learning how to build a network around yourself. You start how to self-care in some ways. What is it that you need to take the breaks that you need to have? And, how do you find the right friends and loyalties and things like that? So it let me learn things that I would never have been able to learn otherwise in any other environment, right? And I think a normal college for me would not have been a good fit.
What was your extracurricular, Josh?
Extracurricular, I played racquetball and band, right? I am a band nerd through and through.
Was it cymbals?
Nope, drumline. I'm a drumline guy.
Drumline. Oh, drumline. Very cool.
A drumline guy, and then I was a golfer in high school. Again, the nerd sports. But I got into racquetball.
No fast running involved, huh?
Oh no, I hate running. I ran 3 miles a year.
Yeah, you joined the Marine Corps.
Oh yeah. Hey.
For those that don't know, that's the Marines do. They run and keep running. They run like, here's a 10-mile warm up.
Yep. Running, we did a lot in the Marine Corps, but I got into racquetball. Racquetball was extracurricular. I lucked into some friends that worked at the academy that used to coach and teach racquetball. They were sponsored by various tennis companies, and I got exposed to that sport. And it was very similar to golf. It was, we had 9 racquetball courts at the academy. It was right down below my dorm. So it was something I could go do to be physical and build a friendship. And we actually built a club team. I ended up getting sponsored by Echelon Rackets. So we actually built an entire team sport out of it. We used to travel all over the DC area, going to tournaments. And for me, that became a really big outlet for me, was getting into competitive sports in college. So I probably played, 10 to 15 hours a week, downstairs, but it gave me time again to coach and to teach and compete.
There's something about getting trapped in a room with a ball flying around. bound to get
Yeah.
hit in the head or the
Oh, you get
face.
hit. You're gonna get hit and it hurts.
Like the
But
big goggles. That's why I keep thinking like the Minions, like the giant goggles, so you
yep.
don't get smacked in the take an eye out.
Yeah, but there's a lot. I mean, again, it's knowing yourself, right? So part of the thing I loved about golf and racquetball as sports is that you have to know what you're capable of, because if you try to be somebody you're not, or play the game in a way that isn't how you play it, you're going to lose, right? So we saw it all the time. Sometimes we're growing up in golf that, some other smaller player could hit a club and he could hit it farther than me, and your pride comes in and you're like, I can do that too. And then you try it and you screw it up and it hurts you when you're not non-competitive. And same thing in racquetball. Like you play against somebody who had a shot that was, kicking your butt. You're like, I can do that too, but you haven't practiced it. You don't know it. That isn't who you are. And if you try to be somebody you're not in that sport, you will never win. You have to know you. You have to know your skills, your strengths, and your weaknesses, and play to those, right? And play with those. And if you don't, then you're going to lose. So I think it was just a really good, again, starting point on know yourself, know who you are, be comfortable with that, and stay in that realm, stay in that lane, right? Not that you can't learn and expand yourself, but you have to know yourself first and be comfortable with that, first and foremost.
That's good. You find a life lesson in racquetball too, because I mean it's all these little life lessons and anecdotes along the way. But I do want to talk about your time when you did become a Marine Corps officer, when you did graduate commission. Where did you end up going, and tell us a little bit about your career from there?
All right, where did I end up going? A little bit everywhere. So started out in aviation. I was an aviation contract. I went all the way through flight school. So the basic schools where everybody starts in Quantico, Virginia, then down to Pensacola. We had a huge backlog in time. So it was 6 months wait before I even started flight school. So I volunteered and became an XO at a signal school across the way at Corey
You
Station.
volunteered? Oh my goodness. What
I
are you doing,
volunteered.
Josh?
I would go nuts if it was like, hey, just go to the beach and do nothing for, I was like, I did not become an officer to do nothing. So I volunteered to go become the XO at Corey Station. Great, first humbling experience when I walk in and the master guns had been in service longer than I'd been alive, and it was, humbling to say, hey, he's calling me sir. And it's like, I don't deserve that, right? I should be calling you sir, and learning the culture and respect that I saw from the senior enlisted to help build, the identity of an officer in the Marine Corps, to start there. And then, 6 months later, started flight school, moved out to Corpus Christi, out in Texas, which was great. And then due to weather, got delayed there. I mean, so my journey to flight school was really long. Eventually finished in Meridian, had a crazy mountain bike accident, separated my shoulder, added more months to my journey to becoming a pilot. Which that part I think was hardest for me going through that, because when I, got delayed, I lost my class, right? So normally you go through with a single class and you're always training together. You're kind of this team and camaraderie. And when I separated my shoulder, I got detached from that class. And when I finally got back into the cockpit, you're kind of just shotgunned all around, right? So I think that started a framework for me of just kind of get it done rather than do it right. I then went to the Harrier community. When I showed up, they had just had a Class A mishap and had shut down student training for about 6 months. So there was another massive delay, again, getting into training. And as we started getting back into training, they were trying to accelerate and make up for lost student production. And since I was the class lead, I was a senior ranking officer in the class, my class voiced that they felt unsafe. So I did what I thought was right and I spoke up about it. And that became kind of the beginning of the end from my aviation career, whether I liked it or not. So, I finished, I graduated, got to the fleet, made some normal, I think, new guy mistakes. And all of a sudden my CO says, you're grounded pending an investigation. I did not realize it, but he had railroaded me out of that community through the investigation process. So that was a really painful time for me. The investigation board came back unanimously that I was a good pilot and I should be kept flying. But my CO had disagreed, but didn't tell me until the paperwork had gone all the way through the chain of command. So felt really betrayed, was really frustrated at that time. But I then transitioned to ground logistics, served with the infantry as an S4. I deployed with NATO, doing air logistics, had a great time. And then again, more adversity. I was with Victor 19. If you go look up Hawthorne, Nevada, 2013, there was a mortar mishap that killed eight Marines. And since I was a vocal advocate against some of the things that the command was doing, the CO pinned it on me. So again, it was just some rough years in my career. And yet I was so truly blessed to be a Marine. I deployed after that with SOCOM doing human intelligence. I came back and got into division plans, got told about project management and Lean Six Sigma when I was in uniform, and I saw the blessing and benefit that those had, in active duty. And little did I know that that would then create the foundation for me to build a company, 3 years later, that's now, 5 years old, called PM ProLearn, where I'm able to take all of that experience, all of that struggle and pain in some ways, but now be able to help and relate to so many people who have been down so many different career tracks in every MOS and every branch of service to achieve the vision of helping people that we have now of integrating, certifications as PME, so that people can have a better transition than I did. Right. So at the time it hurt, at the time it sucked. And I can look at it now. And I told my best friend this morning, as I was talking to him, that, I would not be effective today had I not been on the journey I've been on. And, when you look at what's right in front of you, it doesn't make sense, and it hurts and it's hard. And yet the character being forged in you is still being built. And now as a result, we have a, successful company with, 19 to 20 employees, and we're helping thousands of veterans a year learn through the blessing that I had, in uniform. So
did you end up having, you said you spoke to your best friend this morning. Did you have a couple people at that time in your career that you could turn to? Do you have any sort of mentorship guidance that stick out to you in your time in the Marine Corps?
So my best friend, James, Chair Pitch, is who I talked to. I mean, we're still friends. He's my best man in my wedding, and me for his, and he's about to take over command of a VAQ squadron actually up in Whidbey. And I'm flying out to for a change of command this summer. So, I mean, he was just a really good friend for me, as a confidant, but the thought of a mentor, role model, like it's one of the things I think I had as a gap in my career along the way, right? I don't think I really had any mentor until my last CO, Colonel Simmons, right at the G4, was, I think, one of the first people who kind of took me under his wing, is like, I want to try to help you. At that point, I'm, 9 years into service, so because I think of the aviation career path and how it works, how long it is in the pipeline, like you don't get that traditional mentorship of, someone to come alongside you. But he was a tremendous resource for me and a really good mentor. Gary Loberg's another one. He was lieutenant colonel when I was with NATO. Kind of the first time I felt like somebody listened and cared and wanted to guide me, in my career. He was instrumental in me getting to choose logistics as my second career choice, after aviation, and to have someone kind of believe in you regardless of the, what's on paper,
Right.
was really impactful to me. I still look back at that time with him and say, I really needed someone like that, when I was going through that transition, to believe in me and say, I think you have a lot to offer. So I think, so Colonel Loberg, Colonel Simmons, I mean, those two were probably the biggest active duty mentors that I have. My friend James, my friend Travis Hale, he went through some stuff later on, but those are guys from the academy that were my sponsor brothers, have always been kind of just key pieces for me, and my last is my spiritual mentor, I guess, Ron Kohler was a Bible study leader that I had from the Navigators back in college, and he was always someone I could call and ask for, kind of that spiritual advice, as a Christian, to say, hey, like, I'm struggling with this, and have someone who would never judge you, never look down on you, had no knowledge of the military whatsoever. So it was never a career thing, but it was just a life thing to say, I need someone to talk to, no matter how bad it is, no matter how much it hurt or what you've done, that would never judge you and always give you sound advice. So, I was blessed to have key people that were able to be there with me along the way. But, a military mentor was something I never felt like I really had. And I think there's a huge value in getting that early, in your active duty career.
Right, great. I think that's interesting about you highlighting the aviation track and that career journey there, and the lack of mentorship, because I'm sure that maybe some of our listeners today, they may have been in the same boat where they didn't have a mentor, but looking back on it, just how pivotal that is. And even during that time where you made a decision to help out your buddies and to speak up and speak out, and that's not something that in this career field is something that's always looked as a positive. It can definitely be a career ender at the same time. So I think even just having mentors to bounce off sometimes when we have ideas like that, where we are looking over the cliff and we're like, we are going to be the hero. And in this story, the military, doesn't always take that too well. So I think it is something that, looking back, but as you said, you were forged from the experiences that you had, and it helped lead you to where you are today. And I think that's really powerful. And so with that, I really wanted to talk about your transition, because you did have that time in a different, you didn't have like a direct career path with the Marine Corps. You sort of bounced in different areas and had a long haul there. But especially because you said you didn't get a mentor really until you're almost at the halfway mark. So what did that look like for you, making that choice to transition from active duty?
I mean, it wasn't really a choice that I had, right? I mean, my choice for transition was made for me. I was a non-select major, right? Because of the crazy career path that I had, Marine Corps was looking to downsize from, 202,000 down to 184,000 at the time. So it's kind of looking for anyone that didn't fit the mold, right? So I think I was an easy pickings when it came to who don't you pick for major. So my transition was not desired. I did not leave because I wanted to. I left because I was told you have to get out. In that I didn't really have a transition mentor, which I think it also driven my passion to help others, mentor or navigate transition better. It was kind of, hey, go to a job fair, figure it out. And again, the one gap is most of the people you want to turn to are still in active duty and have never actually been down that road before. So there's no one, this was back in 2014, 15, when I got non-selected the first time. It's like, who do I turn to? Well, my peers have never been through it before. They'll try to help and give you advice, but there wasn't the same value, I think, of like, V2I and the networking community. I didn't know what LinkedIn was or how to use it. I didn't know how to network. I did not know how to reach out to and find the mentors that are there now to be able to figure out how to navigate it. So I turned to headhunters. I mean, I talked to Bradley Morris. Originally, they're the ones that told me about PMP. Thankfully I already had Lean Six. I was talking with Orion, and Lucas Group and Cameron Brooks, and I ended up using Alliance Careers myself, which I thought was just the thing to do. It was the easy button on some level because I didn't know how to navigate transition. So having someone kind of do it for you seemed like the best decision to make. Hindsight being 2020, I learned a lot in that process, and the journey I've been down showed me a lot. Right. I think I could have possibly done better, but now that's framed my hunting versus fishing analogy, where I just equated it to trout fishing. Throw your resume into the water, hope to catch a fish, and you want a guaranteed fish, go to a trout farm, and that's a headhunter that just throws your resume in front of starving fish, and you're guaranteed to get one. So the music stopped, and I got to take a job home, and I was grateful to have the job. And I love the field of project management, but I quickly learned I could have been probably more, happier and better suited in a different company, or earned a lot more as well, right? If I would have known how to network, what I was really worth, and how to talk to people, which I try to teach those now, or how to hunt, right? How to use LinkedIn, how to find veterans inside of companies. But first and foremost, and I just talked to the USO earlier today to do some classes with them on how do you identify who you are and build a foundation of your identity, your passions, your skills, and your strengths when the uniform comes off, right? And I think that's so hard for us to do as vets because we are given a new identity, in uniform that we don't know how to shed, and we don't really want to shed, but then you leave the family and you kind of get in this like floundering, foreign orphan space of wanting to be adopted and yet not really knowing how to go about that.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you were saying about the transition and the importance of networking, because that's something that I don't think that, but at least I know for my transition off active duty, I didn't really know about networking until I started putting myself out there, reaching out to the different platforms like Vets to Industry and Veterati and LinkedIn. And that's where I really learned about networking. But did they even have SFL TAP during your time? Did you have a transitioning class you had to go through?
Yeah, and I think it was only slightly worse than it probably is today. I mean, it was a 5-day mandatory class to tell you about resume, writing a resume and how to do an interview. And they kind of had bring a suit and wear it in and see if it fits right or something for the little bit. And most of it was about how to get enrolled in the VA and teaching you about disability claims and other stuff. But it was not enough at all, right? And again, my passion is that you spend years building a new identity and give you 5 days and a slap on the back saying thanks for your service, go figure it out. And it really takes a lot more than that. And it takes time, and my passion is trying to help build a transition educational continuum that starts 3 to 5 years out, right? Give, our vets time to explore and deconstruct the identity they've been given, identify their own passions and requirements, explore a little bit through, training in things like certifications to touch industries and network with, mentors in various industries to find out where do you really want to go? What do you really want to be doing? And to, in some ways take the mask of pretend off, because you don't just have to suck it up anymore. You don't have to tolerate, hey, I don't want to work out in the mornings. Well, sorry, you're going to work out anyway. So, I don't have to have that part of my life anymore. So when you stop pretending like everything's great and start evaluating what you really want, it's going to take some time to try it a little bit, taste it, touch it, see it, explore it, so that when transition finally comes, it's just a step, right? It's not a cliff that you trip off of, which is what I felt like. You're kind of just, you come to the end and you trip and you're falling and, hopefully something catches you.
Your time at the academy, when you mentioned about your figuring out, you almost alluded to it, of finding your why, even while you're at Annapolis, like knowing that you wanted to be a Marine, and just feeling that, seeing that, knowing that you wanted to be a Marine. And so that helped drive you throughout that time of the academy. And then this is a little bit, you're going through another, so you did that transition, that first part, figuring out, getting into your plebe year, first year academy, and then you transition again, because now you're learning this whole new thing about being a Marine Corps officer. Now you're going through another transition. And that's what I think I learned too, is like the multiple transitions that we go through throughout just our life in general. But you alluded to even certifications, but I think that was really valuable from what you mentioned earlier in the episode about finding your why, and at least at that point, wanting to be a Marine. So, and I think that even for me, like, I didn't realize my why until much later than that. So I think that in that sense, you were lucky to be able to figure that out. And I'd love to know, I know you speak to service members, transitioning service members all the time, but if you were to speak to a room of them now, what's your advice to them as far as, you allude to certifications starting early? Do you have any kind of a key highlight there that you'd give them as advice?
I mean, other than the start early, start now, kind of a concept, I really think it's that you have to understand that every journey is unique, and it's a journey. It is not a destination, right? And in that journey, there are every emotion you ever think you're going to feel, and all of those emotions are okay. I was sharing with a, retiring Chief One Officer out of Hawaii, just volunteering, mentoring, him. And one thing that came out is he felt guilty because he wanted to leave. And I said, you should never feel guilty wanting to do what's best for you, right? And you've served, you've done your job. Like, it's okay to want something different. And I could see the weight of emotion like fall off of him, almost come to tears, like, wow, like, you're the first person that told me it's okay to have feelings, and there's kind of a, some joke you watch, like Major Payne, and other movies out there in Hollywood about, just suck it up and tolerate it. But emotion is going to happen, especially during transition, and it's going to flood you and in some ways overwhelm you. So allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to have passions, allow yourself to have your own desires, and explore those, listen to those, talk to people, right? Don't just do what you think you're supposed to do. I think it's so hard for us in uniform, because all we've been taught is to do what you're told, right? This is going to be your MOS, and it's given to you, and you're going to go to this school. And when you get to your unit, this is how you're supposed to behave. And this is how you do the job. And this is the SOP. This is the training. This is the lockstep track you're supposed to go down. And then in transition, you're kind of waiting for someone to say, go do it like this. And yet that can't happen, because everyone's journey is their own. And we start grasping onto things that we want to make it feel like it used to be. The family's supposed to guide you and direct you. And yet it's kind of the first time where, look, you need to start exploring and allow yourself to run through who you are, right? What is your why? What are your strengths? What do you really want to be doing? And then how do you build up the capability in yourself to let you go do the job you really want to have? And, so I think is, start early, but allow yourself the freedom to explore beyond what you are told to do or you think you are supposed to do, and start exploring what you want to do and map that out first. And then, choose the path that lets you get there. So I use the analogy, I said fishing earlier, hunting is the counter to that. And the first step in hunting is what and why are you hunting? And to do that, Sun Tzu, know your enemy, know yourself. You have to know who you are. You have to know what you want in life from, pay, salary, location, expectations, responsibility. There's so many things you have to start exploring. But that frames then, what are you hunting after? What kind of a job do you need to have that's going to satisfy who you are and your life requirements? And it starts with knowing your requirements and knowing yourself, right? So explore that, right? Simon Sinek has a great veteran discount. It's a $250 program called Find Your Why. That's $25 for vets. It's tremendous. StrengthsFinder 2.0, the Gallup Clifton StrengthsFinder assessment.
Did that one
Another
too. Yeah.
tremendous way to know your strengths. And again, neither one of those tell you a job title, but they let you know what you bring to the table, and you can assess, if I take this job in this industry, am I going to be able to use the gifts that I have? Am I going to be able to do a job that fits my why? And if it's not going to be that way, don't go after it. I'll tell you, you're not going to be satisfied. You're going to be miserable quickly. But if you know your why, if you know your strengths, if you know your requirements, you may have so many more opportunities or job titles that you never even considered before. Like right now, I'm the chief strategy officer, director of business development, whatever, doing sales. And when I first transitioned, I said, I never, ever want to do sales because my perception was wrong of what that looked like. But I'll tell you, 4 p.m. ProLearn, helping veterans upskill and transition better. I love my job and I love what I get to do every single day to help people. And I get to leverage my strengths and strategy and thoughts to build and grow a company. So with this company and this purpose and this mission, this job title works for me. But for another company, it might not. So the job title is not the foundation. Who you are and knowing yourself and your requirements is the foundation.
And I think that one thing that really sticks out to me, Josh, with your journey especially, is I have come across veterans who don't want to identify as veteran when they get out. Like when they make that transition, they don't identify as veteran. It's like, yes, I served, I did my time, but that's it. I'm wiping my hands clean of it. And I would almost think that with the experience that you had, that things weren't always sunshine and rainbows during your time in service. And that you could have easily, just walked away and been done with that, just done with the veteran community. But the fact that you continue to just show up every day and continue to reach back, especially directly, you have companies that they may touch the military once in a while, but you literally do it every day, that you're meeting with different military installations, different veteran groups, even some of the veteran service organizations that you volunteer with. I think that's really commendable that you continue to do that, and share, that things weren't always great in your military career. You did serve and you do love the Marine Corps, and you love giving back to veterans so that they can learn from your story, your experience. And so I did want to give this opportunity for you to touch a little bit on the veteran service organizations that you do volunteer with. Or even some of the other great ones out there. I know you talked about a suit earlier, about SFL TAP teaches you about a suit, but we know a great guy out there that suits.
Salute to Suit. I got to give total credit to A-Rod and Salute to Suit. I've been a brand ambassador with them now for, almost 2 years, I guess. And I still talk to him frequently and try to give him some insights in entrepreneurship and understanding the veteran community so he can better serve the fellow vets, right? So I love what he's doing. If you're looking for a wardrobe, his Dress for Success class is amazing. The coaching you'll get from him on how to look like a professional and whether it's supposed to be, double-breasted, single-breasted, how many buttons are supposed to be. I mean, all the things you never really know how to ask. Because
I did not know till I talked to A-Rod. I didn't even know how to dress myself till I talked to him.
It's like, as a SoCal boy, I remember the first time I said, this is a formal dinner. I said, what's that mean, a button down? And it was like, oh, it's semi-formal. I was like, so jeans and a t-shirt, not polo, I had no idea how to dress whatsoever. So I love what A-Rod's doing. I volunteer a lot with him. I do a lot of volunteer with Always Opportunity. Somebody like, why do you volunteer with a competitor since they take students away from you? And it's like, why? Because I think I can still help them improve their product and help their veterans that they're touching and do it in a better way. So I volunteer my time with O2O. I teach an empowered transition class with them. I just talked to USO today. I think I'm going to be invited out to Fort Hood after one of their mega career fairs that they're doing to teach that class about identity with the USO. And again, I volunteer with anyone and everyone I possibly can. I'm an ACP mentor. I've done free webinars with ACP. I volunteer with MOA to do classes on translating military to project management, why veterans make it project managers, again. So, that is my passion, is helping to educate and empower vets so that they are aware of and can make the right decision for themselves, right? And again, I love A-Rod, love what he's doing, love the team I get to work with, Tim Dahlhaus, the CEO, who I went to church with on active duty. We sang in the praise team together. We were both in uniform. He became my PMP trainer, and now he's a business.
Should have had Tim on here so you guys could sing and do a demo for us.
Oh, and I'm a drummer. I don't sing.
I think you're like almost like a walking fact sheet, Josh. Like, I see with a lot of the work that you're doing, it's debunking the myths and debunking the gray area, like all these questions that we have when we're transitioning. You just go down the line and you answer those questions. For the military veteran community, you're like, well, you're a walking fact sheet. Well, because you really just take the time to understand those answers. But like, to your fishing analogy, your hunting analogy, knowing the audience that the veteran and military community, that we are special in the sense we're different. We're not your average student. We're not your average college kid. We're not your average person, civilian going through a transition. There's unique differences about us in our community, and you take the time to create those analogies so that we can better understand and relate, and really take that time to identify what we want to do next. And it can be scary if we don't have that direction. I think you put it in the most simplest terms. So I know I'm sure that our listeners are going to want to get in touch with you and ask more questions since you have all these answers. So I wanted to, if you could tell us a little bit about how our community, our listeners, can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So I am on LinkedIn. You can look me up, Joshua J. Atkinson with a T. So it's Atkinson. Joshua is spelled like Joshua. Go figure that out. If you want to send me an email, you can, jatkinson@pm-prolearn.com. Go to our website at pmprolearn, right? pm-prolearn.com. Send a note, fill a request out, go on chat and say, hey, I just want to talk to Josh. Again, my phone number, 443-716-5614. Just don't spam me out there. I don't care. I answer calls from everybody. I take calls all night. Sometimes, I've talked with folks in Korea and Italy and Guam, and I set up time to be available when I can be, because, again, all I'm doing is sharing what I wish I would have known. And the metaphors and the things I've been able to come up with are because I experienced them and I just wanted to find a way to make it better. So, connect with me. I am at that like 30K limit on LinkedIn, so I have to delete people to add people. So I'm always kind of going through and cleaning out my connections so I can add more connections and keep helping more people. But that's part of who I am.
See, so that's what I was saying. I was like LinkedIn celebrity, and you're like, no, I'm not. I'm like, I don't have 30,000 nearly, but
it's just all the doors I knock on. So people don't follow me and haven't really come to me. It's in me going to find a bunch of veterans and say, can I help you? Right. And that's how we grew ProLearn from the beginning. Was, the time I had 500 connections, I went and started adding any veteran I possibly could and saying, hey, I'm trying to help vets. Here's what I want to do to help them. Do you know anybody I can help? And if it's you, great. If it's somebody else, can you please connect me with that person? Because that's what I think that's
great. Because we're not, because sometimes we're not in the position, especially with many of us having type A personalities in the military, we don't want to ask for help, and we think that we can figure it out on our own. And so I think even just having someone reach out, and I had folks reach out to me on LinkedIn that they asked me a question, and it's a question that I didn't stop to think about, and they get me thinking, and I'm like, you know what, I actually don't know the answer, but I could use your help, or I'd like to schedule a virtual cup of coffee with you and talk more about it. So I really appreciate you throwing out every way that they can contact you, even smoke signals. So connect with Josh to learn more, whether that's just the veteran organizations that he mentioned today, volunteers with. And I think Josh brought up a great point. Volunteering is so great. It's so great to give back. You receive so many blessings tenfold on the return end, but even just growing out your network, growing out those opportunities and opening doors through volunteering. But I want to thank you today on behalf of Veteran Voices for joining us. And we invite you to find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. A big thanks to our partners at Vets to Industry. This is Mary Kate Soliva wishing all of our listeners nothing but the best. Stay motivated. As Josh says, do good and give forward to be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody.